a Wampus Cat cheerleader from Conway, Arkansas, to president of one of the leading architectural and design firms in the United States. That's today's guest. She's a winner. Let's learn. Welcome to Decision Points. I'm Doug Hudson.
I'm Scott Wood.
Thrilled to introduce Lindsay Wilson, president and principal of the architecture and design firm Corgan.
Indeed.
Fancy. There's another title on there, interior sector lead.
That's right.
What does that mean?
That means the workplace interior studio part of our practice.
Okay.
I'm responsible for that part of our practice as well, which is really how I spent the majority of my career, is designing and implementing designs for corporate office space.
No way.
Yes.
I just got to go. What's the current trend?
What's the current trend?
This is a good question.
What's the current trend?
100%. The current trend is creating a workplace that is magnetic. What does that mean? That is what everybody wants to do. So no matter how big or small or what industry, when we first sit down with a client, the conversation goes something like this. We want people to want to come here, be in the office more.
Lindsay, because this is all I'm thinking about right now.
This is his love language right
all
here.
I'm thinking about.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here's the complicated part of it. There's no one bell or whistle. There's no one solution. Every company has a different value proposition. And so we always start the conversation with, what is the purpose of your place? Because for some, it's to acquire customers. So it's about sharing that experience. For others, it is for employees only. It is for collaboration and innovation. But we did a fairly large piece of research last year, which was everybody was talking about flexible work, hybrid work. And we were like, let's do a pretty big study of 1,000 workers that have a choice. So have a choice at least some of the week, whether or not they go in or not. Those are the people that we wanted to talk to. And the number one thing that they want in the workplace when they go to an actual office
is their own desk.
No, it's technology that works and easily accessible resources for technology.
What does that mean?
Help desk.
That's Kelvin in True North vernacular.
Bail me out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I need help.
In some ways, we've gotten so focused on, and yes, people love free food. They love lunch brought in. They love places, cool amenities and things like that. But if they have a better experience in getting their job done at the office than they do at home, that is the number one, determination factor if they're going to want to go there.
So let's spend a few minutes on this, because this is very topical for us.
Great.
So obviously in COVID, like everybody, we sent everybody home for a period of time, and then we brought everybody back, but we said, look, you can have 2 days a week at home, 3 days a week in the office. So what does everybody do?
Monday, Friday,
right? Monday, Friday, they're at home. Tuesday, Wednesday, they're in the office. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at True North Advisors are awesome. The energy is great. People are bouncing around and then Monday, Friday, it's kind of like, as my kids would say, womp womp. I don't even think I did that right. But anyways, they'll
send you
get it.
text
They're gonna critique me on that.
They'll text you.
I love the energy. Just even yesterday, I was like, man, the energy up here is so good. And then we were doing our podcast yesterday as well, and our guests were like, man, there's people everywhere, and you could feel this energy. And so we've got a decision to make, a decision point coming up in the future about how do we do work from home. And I don't think we will eliminate it. I just think we have to rethink it. I do think we've done a good job with our space in terms of just creating an environment. You've been up there, Lindsay, and that's inviting and where people want to be there, but I can definitely feel the difference.
Oh, it makes a huge difference. And the other trend that we see, certainly as far as real estate goes in the DFW area, but it's really repeating in most kind of growth large cities. Where we're out of space is in the nicest space.
Yeah.
Yep.
Class AA and A buildings are full. So what we're seeing is when people want to make an investment in the workplace, they're doing it right. We have some of the best projects that we've had in my entire career. And the conversations are about what we were just talking about, employee experience. What makes this a tool for getting your job done, not just a warehouse for people. Like that doesn't fly.
Yeah.
And so I get really frustrated, as many people do, when you see these numbers of how much vacancy there is in the metroplex. I really wish they would break it by class, because that would tell you the story. B and C assets, especially out in the suburbs, nobody wants to go there.
Yeah, no one's there.
Right.
And so I think we have an interesting design problem coming up. How do we reimagine a lot of these buildings that are empty in some of our, especially suburban markets and in the CBD, to be, what should they be in the next kind of evolution of Dallas that is going to be useful, that are going to be destinations? And the answer might not always be office should remain office.
Do you think I know this is going to oversimplify it massively, but in 5 to 10 years, 8% of that will be residential. 10%, 40%? I mean,
it's going to be interesting downtown, because some of those conversions are happening and starting to come online now. So I think
are they selling?
Well, they're pretty early.
Yep.
I think downtown, a third of it will certainly be residential.
Yep.
I think in the suburbs, it's a real question mark.
All right, Lindsay. So you're an interiors person.
I am.
Right. So let me ask you this question, or let me give you this scenario and tell me how it lands. So right out of school, I was working in New York for big bank, Chase Manhattan Bank. And, I had a travel per diem when I would go travel. And I usually could stay at a hotel that was a little nicer, actually a lot nicer at the time than my apartment. And so for me, it was like, yeah, send me on the road. I'll travel all you want, because they were paying my expenses, and I was generally staying in a place that was much nicer than my apartment.
Eating nicer, staying nicer. It was working out nicely for you.
It was a good deal. And so part of how I've thought about our space is, for our young people who are just getting started and just trying to build their life, like if we could create a space that's magnetic, that is in some ways maybe more convenient, nicer, if that's the word, but maybe it's the tech, maybe, but it's like better in some ways than even their apartment. They're going to be like, yeah, I want to go to the office.
And I think that's a mix of the softer things, like, are there social events? Are you in a neighborhood, which you guys certainly are, where there's restaurants, bars, gyms, boutique fitness.
Walkability is going to be a huge thing.
Walkability is going to be huge. The neighborhood, and you can see that when we talk about these Class A and AA assets that are getting really full, they're in really walkable neighborhoods, because that's what young people want.
I don't know what 8 years old is, but I want the exact same thing.
Very fair point.
Vacation to me is not getting in a car. So if I can walk somewhere in my day-to-day.
But the other piece that you touched on, back to the technology, high achievers and young people who really want to do well, if they're going to have a more compelling call with a manager, a coworker, a client or potential client in the workspace, they're going to come and do it.
Yeah.
And that's what's exciting.
When I heard you describing, it's almost like you would have heard residential architects say forever, let me get to know you, and so I can design a home that you want. Do you like to entertain? Do you like more of this? It's like we're really asking that question now 100% in the workplace.
Yes, and that has changed in the 25 years that I've been doing this. When I first started my career, the client contact was most often the CFO, and they told you first what the budget was.
Keep the budget low. Keep it here.
Second, how much space they had leased already before you came onto the project, and how many people needed to be in the facility.
Fit in there, like you guys have a term for people per square foot. I forget what the term is, but
square foot per person,
density.
But just like what the overall program was.
Yeah.
Now the CHRO is almost always in the room. The head of marketing, depending on the type of company, because we're going to tell a story.
Yeah.
And the CEO is always there at the beginning to set the tone and the vision.
Yeah.
And then we're talking about what's the purpose, what do you want to accomplish? Then we're helping you figure out how big that should be. And then we're making sure it all aligns with the budget. Yeah. It's like completely flipped the model around.
What I love about this already is we just dove in the deep end.
Went right to the
You were
end.
like, what's workplace design?
Yeah, oh, it's phenomenal. I mean, obviously, I think that's what you guys are sensing. It's energy for us. It's important.
Oh, yeah.
To so many. Let's back up with you. Where are you from? Where were you raised?
I'm from Conway, Arkansas.
No way. I live in Fayetteville, Arkansas now. Come on, Conway.
I went to the University of Arkansas.
So I have to ask, what year did you graduate from high school?
I graduated from high school in 1994.
Okay. So you're a little bit younger, quite a bit younger. So my roommate in college was from Conway, Arkansas.
Really?
Yes.
This is way too many. This is
but I'm 10 years older than you.
instant
So
Arkansas connection.
Yeah.
Well, it is because some of our dearest friends, John Furlow, the Furlows are from Conway. But again, we're old. We're too old for
Home of the
vintage.
Wampus Cats.
Yes, it is. The Wampus Cats is right.
Indeed.
My son played a football game against the
Yes.
Wampus Cats in Conway. So raised there. You still have family there?
I somehow engineered my life to where my parents live here over in Lakewood, and my brother and his family live in Richardson.
No way. Yeah.
Yes.
Were you
Now,
the
here.
first one to come here?
I was the first one.
Yeah. All right.
Now
the
my
leader of the family is clearly Lindsay.
my best friend since I was 8 years old still lives in Arkansas, but in Little Rock, and then one of my best buddies from college in Little Rock. So we go back to Little Rock a fair amount, but not to Conway too much.
So who's Lindsay growing up? Are you into sports, art, music? What are you into?
I was always into art, which
Yep.
kind of ultimately gets to design.
Yep.
And I was a cheerleader.
Yep.
Which is
We're the
why-
Wampus
We're the
Cats.
Wampus Cats.
Yes.
what colors were the Wampus Cats?
Blue and white?
Blue and white.
Come on.
Do you
there
know
you
what
go.
a Wampus Cat
I
is?
have no idea what a
A
Wampus Cat is.
six-legged mythological cat.
Okay.
4 for running at the speed of light, 2 for fighting with all its might.
There you go.
Go Cats.
Somebody in Conway in like 1894 came up with that.
Totally. And they tore down the high school. That was the high school when I was there, and they have a beautiful high school now. And along with that, they got a new Wampus Cat statue. When I was in high school, it was this concrete blue cat. And every year, without fail, our rival high school was Russellville. And they came and they knocked the 2 fighting legs off the Wampus Cat every year, and then they would concrete them back on. So they were basically just these giant, they got a beautiful, bronze statue in the modern era that they can't knock.
John
the
and
legs off.
Robert, this episode is for the two of you all. Just want you to know.
So yeah, so then I graduated from high school there, went to the University of Arkansas.
Okay. And what'd you study?
So ultimately, I studied interior design. I went, as you used to go to college without any idea what you wanted to
Yeah.
be when you grew up, just as a general business major,
Yep.
because my dad was a businessman, and I thought that's just what I was going to do. So I took my first business class the first semester and realized this is going to be a miserable experience if this is how I
Yeah,
have
this
to
is
spend
it. What was the
my
class? Do you
time.
remember?
It was a general economics class. Irony there. I ultimately married a finance and econ major.
Okay.
So, just surround yourself with people
Correct. You
who
just
know
married
things
it.
that you
married
don't
it.
know.
I don't need to learn it. Just
I don't
marry
need to
it.
learn it. I'll solve that. I'll solve for that later. The part of the story that's kind of interesting is, so I call my dad and I'm like, this is not going to fly. I got to figure something else out. I think I'm going to be an art history major. And he said, no, you're not. You have to be employable. Try again. And I was like,
That wasn't the answer I
that
was looking
wasn't
for.
the answer.
What happened to the supportive dad
I'm not
here? I just
interested.
got with you.
Which he now denied. He's like, that's not what.
Right. But that's what he said.
I knew my strengths and weaknesses. Weaknesses were always in the mathematic area. So I went through, it was a book, as you guys well know, at that time where you could go through the majors and
Yep.
see what the prerequisites were. So I made a list of all the ones that didn't require much more higher math. And then, this is what I love to impart this to young people. I had to go and talk to the heads of all these departments to
Yeah.
find out about the major. There was no other way to find out. And so I go about,
I guess you didn't have to go to him.
I didn't
You could've-
have
you
to.
could've- But you did choose to do the legwork and the research.
I did. And
Yep.
ultimately, I wander into the office of the gentleman who was leading the design program at that time, who had been a practicing designer in New York City in hospitality design and had retired with his partner to Fayetteville. and then took up teaching. So he had had a professional career. And I will never forget sitting in that office with him explaining all the things you could do with a design degree, which I had been exposed to residential designers. My parents used one for our house. So I understood that, but I didn't know anything about the commercial side of thing. So then go back to my dorm room. Dad,
this is it.
Got it. These are all the jobs you can. He was like, sounds like you did your homework, carry on. And I certainly consider that to be a decision point. Yeah. Obviously.
And your first sales cycle, you closed new business.
And just so fortuitous. And I do think I've tried to remain a really open-minded person, because that kind of like, well, what would happen? Well, what is that? That curiosity has led me to so many cool opportunities.
Keep us walking through that. So interior design major. You enjoyed art growing up, but you didn't really know that was potentially the field until you go through this exercise. Yeah. Correct. Okay. So you finish, graduate Arkansas, and keep us going.
So you are really encouraged, and this is still the practice today, to do internships. Yep. And I did too. One at a commercial firm in Little Rock, and one for a nonprofit called Main Street Arkansas, where they had an architect on staff to help small businesses. They would get grants to redo their storefront or redo the interior of their businesses. And that was two really different but cool experiences about the impact that design can have on a business. So then I definitely had the bug, knew it was going to be commercial side of the profession, not residential, and started applying for jobs. And there was a woman at Corgan who graduated from the University of Arkansas who came every year and interviewed candidates and made job offers. So I had an offer from the firm I interned with.
In Little Rock.
And then I had an offer from Corgan in Dallas. Yeah. Technically in Fort Worth. We used to have an office out on the campus of the airport.
Okay.
And so I accept the Corgan offer without ever coming. Yeah. I had been to Dallas, but not to the company. And so my first job was at Corgan for about 2.5 years. And then I worked at some other places before I make my return.
Why commercial? It just said you knew exactly that's where you wanted to go.
It was honestly that crazy little internship with the nonprofit. So going to these little towns where somebody's gotten a grant for $15,000. I remember this one person who operated their own insurance storefront for Allstate and just kind of had this dilapidated, and we had enough money to do new glass, new doors, little things, but it impressed on me how much it meant to that business owner to then do what they wanted to do. And this idea of the workplace and the office being a tool, is probably the biggest through line in what I believe. And I think that's where I got it. I have so much respect for residential designers because I think that is where people live is so hard.
Well, it's emotional.
It's a different job.
Well,
really.
It is. And it just released a week or two ago. I assume you know Cynthia Collins, tremendous residential, very successful designer. But homes are so emotional. But I think what we're learning, workplaces are becoming just as emotional in that sense of what we're trying to create.
The experience, and our firm also does airports, hospitals, schools. The experience, whether it's a student experience, patient experience, passenger experience, that's where the whole conversation is right now. And I think it's the same on the residential side. How do people want to use their home? You referred to it earlier, is really where that process starts as well.
What was the decision between the Little Rock firm and Corgan, and what was your process for making that decision?
Probably not a surprise. There was more money to come to Dallas and leave Little Rock. And I was ready.
Probably not net more money, but
True.
Because the expense
Yeah, did
structure
Dad
here was a
bring
little
that up?
higher.
True.
Did Dad
Although
bring
my
that up?
first apartment was in Euless, so I did work.
Yeah.
Might have been cheaper than Little Rock,
I did
actually.
work the numbers. I was ready to. I have spent my entire life in a pretty small radius at that time, and I was just really ready. 3 of my really good buddies from college, one had already been accepted at law school at SMU, and 2 had already planned to come to work here. So there was a little bit of a safety net that we were going to know each other, even though we weren't all going to be living together at that time. So those were the real. I didn't think I would stay. I mean, is that the story of everyone who moves to Dallas? I didn't think I would stay here.
Yeah.
Let me pause too.
Yeah.
When and where do you and Craig meet?
Much later.
Okay. All right, so keep
You want
going.
to save that?
Yeah, let's
for
save that then. So let's
there's
go.
a good 10 years.
Yeah. What are you taking away from Corgan, and then why and where did you go after Corgan?
So I was on the aviation team. So working on airport terminal design and airport terminal facilities at that was the job.
Which airports?
So DFW.
No way.
And then at that time, we did everything for American Airlines as well. So if a file cabinet was moved, someone from Corgan with all their moves, adds, and changes, we were overseeing.
Wow. What year is this, Lindsay?
This is a 98.
Okay. So like which terminals at DFW are you working on?
Holt.
Okay.
So a lot of
She's good.
Little
like
stuff.
she's
Yeah.
totally managing you, which I love.
100%.
Because you need to be managed.
Yeah.
So she's doing a great job. Keep going, Lindsay.
So
Here, take these
a
cards.
lot of moves, adds, and changes. A lot of stuff on American's campus that was really interesting. So there was some office stuff, but then some I have been down where the baggage stuff is at DFW.
100%. Yeah.
They were preparing for a really big project. And so I had already started to think, I really like the office more. I don't know if I want to be on the aviation side. And then they call everyone in. This is the office that we had out on American's campus. They call everyone into the conference room one day, and there is a schedule that takes up all 4 walls of this really large room to let us know that Corgan has been awarded Terminal D,
Wow.
the international terminal.
Wow.
And you're walking the room looking at this schedule, and I realize that I will be 30 years old before this thing is even done. And it's like, no thanks.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Which is so fascinating because I have so many talented coworkers who a 10-year schedule is like the coolest, most
Correct.
exciting thing to them
Yeah,
ever.
you know
And
exactly
to me,
what you're
it
going to
was
be doing
like,
for the next 10 years.
100%.
I like a lot of,
You like more speed of conclusion, so to speak, start to finish.
yeah. And some
And change.
And
change
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
some seeing people in spaces, seeing spaces completed and things like that. So ultimately, I leave for another opportunity to just work on interiors projects.
Okay.
I love airport design. As silly
It's
as
so
that
cool.
sounds, I just like the new. We were in Terminal C.
High seat gates.
Yes.
That's our
a couple
fine
weeks
work.
ago, and
Yep.
I
Is
was
it really?
like,
Yeah.
I was like,
That was not a plant. He did not know that.
I was
That's
like,
awesome.
this is really cool. They did a really good job with this space. We were actually at another gate, and I knew about the high C gates. And the person I was traveling with, I was like, we need to go down here
Wow.
and kind of walk through and kind of check it out, because there's a couple restaurants open, but not all of them.
Yep.
Not all the spaces are filled out yet. But I really appreciate good airport design.
I love that. And that both American and the airport, we're exploring like, how do we make this experience better? Because the signage is so different
Signage
in
is
those
really cool.
gates,
Yeah.
and where the information is and where the information about where the travel is. And it actually seems so simple. It's facing you. So as you're walking, as you do down the terminal, you can see, you don't have to get fully in front to see the TV that is for some reason perpendicular.
Behind the desk.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, it's
So-
horizontal signage.
Yes.
That as you look down, you can see each of the gates, and they're giant
Yeah.
signs. They're huge. They've got the gate number in blue, and then where you're going, and you can just kind of look right down the. It's cool.
Yeah. We're very proud of that.
Yeah, you should be. It's
wayfinding,
beautiful.
Wayfinding is huge.
Yep. Where do you go to, and how long are you there, and what are you learning from there?
I went to Boca Powell
Okay.
for about 5 years,
Okay.
and that is where I learned about business development.
Okay.
And I had never been to a new client pitch before that, and I happened to get seated very near to the partner at that time who was responsible for business development. This is another like plug for the office, not that we need one here, but I could hear him on the phone all day
Pitching.
long, calling people, checking in. And I just thought that was so fascinating. Like all that you think about, you go to school at that time and just learned about design, fundamentals of design. Nobody really talked about where does all the business come
Where's the money come
from? Where do the projects come from? How do you get the best projects? And so that was a real gift during that whole time of starting to do new client pitches, starting to build my own network, which ultimately will lead me to Craig, my husband, but of real estate people in the real estate business in Dallas, and really getting plugged into the real estate community, which is so great.
Yes.
So fun and such amazing people and so collegial. And so my really love for the business and the city of Dallas really grew during that kind of 5 years.
What is your role and what are you doing in those 5 years?
Sure. That firm was all really commercial at that time. So office buildings, architecture of office buildings and interiors.
Okay.
I was hired as an interior designer, project manager, kind of running projects. By the time I left, I was really helping to pitch the business, manage the new client relationship, and also work on the design of the project.
Was that person that you were learning from, was there any intentionality, frankly, on the mentoring, or you just, by being in the office and eavesdropping, you were kind of learning the sales business development process?
There was a lot of great people there. Don Powell, one of the founders of the firm, great salesperson, really taught me how to listen in those client pitches and interviews and figure out exactly what's going on. So I had a lot of people to learn from there. It was a good size. There was probably 40 or so people there at that time. So it was a good office environment, made a lot of friends, but also could work directly with the owners, founders, leaders, which I really enjoyed.
Why is it important to listen? How do you listen? What were you learning from those? You talked about how important it is to listen. Why?
I mean, I think you learn the most when you hear someone dealing with difficult situations. And we encourage all of our leaders today, like if you have to have a difficult conversation with a client or a contractor or whoever, don't go into a private room. Like have it out in the open so people can hear how you're managing that conversation from your end. And if somebody asks you a question about it afterward, give them your thought process and how did you prepare for that conversation. So I think that's incredibly important. Conversely, coach them to take personnel coaching and feedback into a private room and not do that in the open. So, knowing what conversation to have where is really important. But it was a downturn. So that was kind of the .com bubble burst.
Okay.
And kind of like now, there weren't as many office buildings being built. So the interesting thing was the leaders of that firm, a lot of them were working on interiors. And so then comes the first real setback. The office market comes roaring back. All the senior leaders who had been entrenched with us in interiors, because that's the business there was, go back to their love, development and designing office buildings. And so then it was kind of like, well, where is this? That's the first time I started to say, okay, this is going to be a career, not a job. So where am I going to go? And I do think that's a question that young people have to be coached to ask, and then leaders have to be coached to give them a path. I mean, that's a real two-way conversation. And I had some frustrating conversations during several phases of my career where it was kind of the, just wait, it'll be fine. We like you, we'll take care of you. That kind of feedback.
Yeah.
Okay, so how would you coach someone who said that's what they're getting at their office today? How would you coach them?
More questions. What does that look like? And I always tell people, narrow the time frame. Because sometimes as a leader, when somebody's like, where am I going to be in 5 years? I have no idea. Let's talk about 3 months. What's a skill that I see this as a skill gap. Do you see this as a skill gap? Okay, what if we get you to this project where you can specifically work on that skill gap, and then we have another conversation? Because I think sometimes people get panicked by the long, where am I going to be in 2 years, 3
Exa-
years.
yeah.
Just like dial it down to something you can both really grab
Yep.
onto.
All right. So you're 5 years there. And then where's next?
So now I'm all young and cocky at this
Okay.
stage. Now I have a little bit of a reputation for winning work, sometimes punching above our weight class and beating some bigger firms at things. And so I didn't necessarily like the answers I was getting. So I'll just
At your current
Yes,
place, Boca
I'll
Pal.
just go get the answers that I'm looking for. So I go to a smaller firm that only does interiors because that will solve all of my problems. If I just
The grass is
take the
greener over there.
architects take the office buildings out of the situation, just focus on interiors, and that'll be great. Then I went to a boutique interiors firm, which now goes by BHA, great firm, another great firm. I was very lucky to work for incredible companies throughout my career here in Dallas. About 13 people at that time. And that is where I realized I'm a big team girl. I like a lot of, we were talking about energy and
Yep.
I like a lot of people, a lot of stuff going on.
A lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving parts. I learned a ton there. The quality of the work that they do is impeccable.
What was the name of that firm before it became BH?
Benson Hilavity. Benson Hilavity Architects. And
Okay.
now it goes by BHA.
Gotcha.
Some really great work, great experiences, but a smaller firm. And so the projects that we were going for, I had also started to get a better understanding of the marketplace. And there was really only one really big firm getting all the prime interiors projects at that time. Still the largest architecture firm in the world. It's Gensler. Still a huge presence in this marketplace,
Yep.
but they really didn't have a challenger.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that kind of then became, I think this is a big town. There could be a lot more people competing for the prime work. There could be other firms giving real opportunities for interior designers, growth and career trajectory, and leadership opportunities for interiors. Architecture firms are traditionally run by architects.
Yep.
The whole creative class of companies has this quirk, in my opinion, where they're run by practitioners. It's a very fascinating thing.
Interesting.
Advertising agencies, graphic design, architecture firms, design
CPA
firms.
firms. Not a lot of creativity in CPA firms, but run by practitioners.
Professional services.
It makes so
Yeah.
much sense, right? It's you're good at this, so you end up becoming the management of it, but it's not necessarily you were not necessarily made to manage.
Yes.
the
Hi,
vision.
my name's Lindsay. Yes.
Correct. Yep. Yep.
Somehow now the manager.
Well, but I feel like you've
Trained as an
but I feel
interior
like
designer.
you've adapted.
I have adapted, and it's been a fun journey. But what became a seed that I kind of, and I think I was young enough to be like, well, this can't be that hard.
Was that all happening when you were at BHA? Like
That's
in your,
kind of-
it was in
yes.
your head.
Because I started by that time I had a pretty good network of brokers and lawyers and people that I had met where I understood.
So you
the
were starting to
marketplace.
see the bigger picture,
Yeah.
and recognizing that where you were was it wasn't connecting.
Yes, because what they had built is what they wanted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
And very successful. And then I started to realize what I really wanted was to be at a bigger place where we could really be a challenger for the best.
So how old were
Biggest
you,
projects.
and how long had you been out of school?
That was probably now it's like 2005.
So kind of out 13, 15
Yeah.
years. Yeah. I have that
Well,
right?
no, that's from 98 is when I graduated from college.
Yeah. Sorry.
You're there how long? And the realization comes you need to make another change at some point.
So about 3 years, I had meeting Craig kind of in this same
Okay.
time
Yep.
frame too.
Yep. Where do y'all meet? How do you meet?
We meet at a Stars game officially. So we worked in the same office building at one point,
Okay.
but we never met.
Okay.
And then he says I interrupted a conversation he was having at a real estate council event one time, stepped right in front of him to talk to. I think Bill
she was
Collier.
managing Craig
Yeah.
as she is managing me.
I don't remember that.
I'm going to go with you on this one, Craig.
Officially, we meet in a suite at the Crescent Suite at the Stars game. And I had just turned 30. We'll get all our years straight.
Yep.
And swore I wouldn't date real estate brokers So that didn't work out.
That's how it always works.
Right.
Yeah. You make this ultimatum and then.
Because everybody knows everybody. And
Yeah.
Well, walk us through that. So your official meeting is at the Stars game.
Yeah. So we're in the same
And then
suite.
when do y'all start dating and then when do y'all get married?
I was working on a project with a gentleman named Greg Biggs, who Craig still works with now.
Yep.
And he had given me the tickets and I brought a friend of mine, and that's when we all meet. And we really started dating like immediately after that. He kind of famously, the first date that I didn't know if it was a date or not, was like, hey, we have an extra seat at our table at this real estate council event. Do you want it? And so I called.
Do you want it?
Yeah. We have these emails too. I called this buddy of mine and I'm like, is this a date? And she was like, if he picks you up, it's a date. If he says meet you there, no.
Fair enough.
I was like, okay.
Good coaching.
Yes, I'd love to take
that seat.
And he did come pick me up.
So
yes. And so from that point on,
we're going to have to give Craig a hard time about that when we see him.
100%. Do you want it?
Do you want this seat?
He also had a purple Maxima at that time, just so we could get that
better.
on the
Do
record.
you have pictures of the purple Maxima somewhere?
I'm sure he has one somewhere.
Yeah.
Craig, who goes to the dealership and says, I want the purple one? That's amazing.
Someone who manages their money very well.
It's true.
Which is what I find out later.
It's true.
Like, well this guy's smart. He's not driving around in a car he can't afford. He drove around in a car he paid cash for.
Exactly. Because there was a discount on the purple one probably too.
Heck yeah. He says it was cloudy that day and he thought it was gray.
Yeah, okay. All right, that's good.
Is he colorblind?
No.
Okay.
But I want to go back, Lindsay. You made a comment before when you left Boca Powell and went to BHA that maybe you got, I don't know if humbled is the right word, but sounds like some life lessons were being picked up in that process. Is that right? And why?
Yes, but I don't think I really understood them till I'm in the seat I'm in now. Because I think part of my problem at that stage was my delivery. You know, I thought I had the best idea in the world, that I knew everything. And so I go in with my plan of how to grow these businesses that in reality, I knew very little about how the business actually ran.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I think and maybe it only comes with age and experience, but I do think if you're going to pitch an idea, how much effort can you put into thinking about the perspective of the people that you're pitching it to?
Good.
And what really goes into making an investment in a business, to growing a part of a business, is not as simple as I had made it at that point when I understood very little about it. And I don't know if there was any other way to learn that lesson, but to kind of be told, hey, I hear you, good idea. I wish it was as easy as you've made it sound. You know, we can't do this or that at this time. And
do you have some specific memories of people telling you that?
yes.
Tell us about one or two of those.
It wasn't what the owners wanted. They didn't want what I wanted.
Yep.
And I took it as they didn't think that I knew what I was talking about, which in hindsight, that's not what they said.
Yep.
That was the story I told myself.
Yep.
They didn't want to grow their business 3X or 4X. That wasn't their vision for their company. They weren't saying my idea was bad. They were saying it wasn't for them.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I took it very personally. And I'm most thankful probably for the lessons learned. I've only been kicked off one project in my entire career. And I was so mad because I just wanted to explain, well, I did this and I did that. And she said she didn't like it, but I explained, and it was Don Powell at Boca Powell. And he was like, it's not about you.
Yeah.
This is their space, their money, their decisions. And you totally offended her.
Yeah.
And that was huge because design, and it is interesting, and it's personal too. These are your ideas that you're putting on paper and serving up to somebody. And when somebody says,
and then when it's done, your name's on it.
yeah. And when somebody says, no, where'd you get that? I don't like it. Some people are very kind in their delivery of, oh, that's cool, but I don't think it's right for our company. Some people are not.
Yeah.
They're just like, hate it. And so separating out the work, the creation from the creator is a pivotal point in every creative's career if you're going to be successful.
It's a great point. And I think, Lindsay, it is art in that sense. And you just nailed it. Just to reiterate that, separating the work, the creation from the creator is absolutely it's the only way you really can get better and I'm sure mature in your all's work. If you keep taking that personally, you're going to stay a designer. You're not ever going to necessarily be a manager or a leader.
Yeah. And you definitely won't be a client leader if you can't.
Exactly. All right. So do you leave BHA and go back to Corgan?
There's a quick detour
Okay.
yes.
Where is that and why?
Oh, you want the detour too?
100%.
There's something in there.
100%. All these decision points. And again,
there's a reason for the detour.
Correct. Because as so many business owners and leaders listen and watch, it's in this thought process. Sometimes you made the right decision for the right reason. Sometimes you may have made the wrong decision. So yes, detour and whys.
So I made the detour because I thought I was burned out. I don't know if that was really it. I also was very close with the leaders of BHA, and I didn't, at that time, want to go to another firm. So I had an opportunity as a BD professional only to work for Knoll, the furniture manufacturer. Even though I had already learned how much I enjoyed being on a team, I took a job that was not really part of a team.
Yeah.
And if I'm honest now, looking back, Craig and I had just gotten married, and it's so interesting because I've heard this from young people making job changes in the past couple of years. I was looking for an easier job.
Yep.
And I found one.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was super boring.
Yep.
And I knew very quickly amazing people to work with. Still some good friends of mine worked there. That's how I got the job. I knew all these people, but the creative part was out.
Yep.
Now I was pure kind of business development and sales. The energy for me wasn't what I was looking for. And then this is where I had said at the beginning, I think I have always been good at kind of listening and to kind of what's out there. Someone very senior left Corgan. I had left Corgan on very good terms, stayed friends with people who were there. And I got a call from a gentleman who's still a coworker to this day that said, "Hey, would you want to come talk? We've got this position open in the interior studio." And I was like, yes, I would. And I sat down with the then CEO, Bob Morris, and he started the interview like this. "Why don't you tell me what you want to do? Then I'll tell you what we want to do, and we'll see if they meet up."
Smart person.
And I had been waiting for somebody to just ask me, "What do you want to do?" And there was the person who is leading the studio still. Her name's Dawn Chisholm. She was the second person I met with. And she was already 25 years into her career. And she also was like, what do you want to do? And when we were then able to combine forces, was the beginning of what now is the modern kind of interiors practice at Corgan. Long time we've had an interiors practice. But
How many years ago then is it since you went back to Corgan?
15.
15. And how long have you been in your role as president?
For 5 years.
5. Okay. Walk us through that process.
It's so funny because it's a bit of a blur. It's been so kind of organic. And Corgan really has done a good job of leadership transitions. They're long, but by the time they're made, they're so obvious. So Scott Roos, who's the CEO, and Steve Holsey, who has been co-president with me, we were trying to backtrack the timing. Like, how many years were we on that leadership committee before? How did Bob kind of do that? So first, it was just in the Dallas market with Dawn and some longtime leaders who are still on the team.
Yep.
Tenure at Corgan, is incredible and something we're really proud of. So, we make these changes. We stopped doing some work. We were doing some landlord tenant work where we said, that's not getting us where we want to go. Let's make this change. We add to the team. We had a real kind of watershed win for the Fossil Global headquarters. And in a lot of ways, that feels like the beginning of what we were doing. Because typically we were doing interiors if the architecture team won the office building, and then we would come along. That was really the first time it was just an interiors job. We were competing with all the big names, and we were successful in this global headquarters project.
Winning business on their own merit, so to speak.
And at the same time, in the firm, we had previously been really geographically based. So we had a New York office. Whatever they did in New York was kind of their own deal. We had a Phoenix office. We had project offices in Miami. And we had then the headquarters in Dallas. And so the next phase is kind of realigning, because the leadership at that time decides we want to grow more geographically, be where our clients are, be able to serve our clients on a more national level. So we're going to realign into these market sectors. So we have 6 market sectors, interiors being one of them, and I was named the sector leader of that whole group. So now tying together Phoenix, New York, Dallas, Houston, and then in the subsequent years, adding as we add locations and decide, okay, which market sectors are we going to put in this location? And sometimes we're chasing an airport. So the airport may establish the project, and then we decide to put interiors along with it, or education along with it. And so from the Dallas responsibility to then kind of 3 cities, now I'm still the market sector leader. That's how we started our discussion. There are interior studios in 9 of our 16 offices.
Okay. Yeah.
And we are almost 1,000 people. We're anxiously awaiting
the 1,000th hire.
The 1,000th hire.
Yeah.
Are you literally at like 999?
Not quite there, but it's imminent.
You're close. It's imminent. It's imminent.
That's exciting.
It's very exciting. Tell us a little bit about Corgan, the company, and you made a couple of comments right before we got started about the story and the journey. It sounds amazing.
And add, like when they asked you, what do you want? What was the answer to that question? And then how does that tie in today?
I said, I want to be competing for the biggest and best projects in Dallas.
And I'm curious, as you've explained Corgan a little bit, did you mean architecture and design? Or
no, I meant interiors projects.
Yeah. And how did he respond?
I like that. No, he said, what's it going to take?
And did you have that answer as well?
I did have that answer because I knew investment in business development and a bigger team.
Yeah.
You got to have the resources and they have to be known. I mean, and that, because it's a very personal business. It's a personal sale because for years, it's a group of people working together at the end of the day.
Yeah. Most like Fossils project. I don't know if that's on the scale of high, medium, low. Was that a big, medium?
It was so it was 500,000 square feet up in Richardson.
In Richardson. Yeah.
So it had previously been a call center for Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Yep.
That Corgan had actually worked on. And then it was really the opportunity to transform it. I mean, we moved the entrance, we cut holes in it. I mean, totally changed the functionality of it. It still works very well.
It's beautiful from the drive. I've not been in it. Generally, a project like that lasts how long?
So that one was quite fast. That one was just a little over a year. So you could take, Toyota's headquarters, that was more like 4 years.
Okay.
Now that was ground up, including the architecture. Corgan did the full project, architecture, interiors, sustainability, everything. And that was pretty fast, even at that 3.5, 4 year mark.
Tell us the story of Corgan.
Corgan is a pretty special firm in our industry. And I don't expect you guys to know this, but you have the behemoth. You have your Genslers with tens of thousands of employees and offices all over the world. You have a couple of firms that through a lot of acquisition are more architecture and engineering.
Okay.
So AECom, which actually has their corporate headquarters here in Dallas now, Jacobs is the same. These are massive. They do huge road projects, engineering. And then you start to get into, and Gensler is architecture only. They don't have engineers. Then you start to get into this next level. There are not that many privately held architecture firms in the 750 to 2,000 range.
Yep.
Like 4.
Interesting.
It's fascinating because architecture firms are notorious for not being able to get out of the founder
Loop.
loop.
Yep.
And so they often sell to their larger counterparts and then just go away.
Yeah.
So Corgan was founded by Jack Corgan in 1938. Our birthday was yesterday.
Congrats, Corgan. Yes.
And he
Here
was
in Dallas.
in Dallas. He was one of the first licensed architects in the state of Texas. He was a pilot, and our firm has almost been in continuous operation for 86 years, except for a little bit of the war, because he was a pilot. But he flew around. He predominantly did movie theaters, drive-ins and movie theaters. Our conference rooms in Dallas are all named after his movie theaters
How
in Texas
iconic.
and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Did he do the Gemini drive-in at Forest and Central?
No.
No. Okay. Sorry.
And we don't have a Gemini conference room. His son, he took over at a pretty early age. There's some great stories where the business was not, it was a very small firm, just a few people. The business wasn't doing that well. And Jack went to his dad and said, hey, I'm willing to do this, but I need to be in charge.
Yep.
And his dad said yes. And he, from a business standpoint, really set us up to do what we're able to do today. And then by stepping aside and retiring when he did in 1998, as a fairly young man, taking his value out of the firm at that time instead of hanging on, really set up.
Not to get stuck in a founder model, maybe even
Yeah,
too.
because at that time there was probably, if I was guessing, 150, maybe 200 employees at that time. And a gentleman by the name of David Lind became the CEO after he had come up in the aviation business. He was part of that Terminal D win that I mentioned, and he became the next CEO. And there was a management committee around him, then the transition to Bob Morris, and then yet another transition to Scott Roosh, the current CEO.
I'm curious, Jack, is that how? Was he an architect? Or
Yeah.
He was. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And we are wholly owned by our employees. We are partial ESOP, and the rest is owned by the principals in the firm.
I'm going to go down this line of questioning unless you tell me not to. So, all right. Because when we spoke on the phone and just getting prepared and getting to know each other, you seem to have a clear passion for growing women in business. How does that play out at Corgan? How does that, what are the pragmatic things? How do you lead out in that at Corgan?
I do have a passion for it, but I think it's more rooted just in equity. Like the best idea wins. The hardest work pays. Like be undeniable. Like that is often.
What a great phrase.
Like make it so obvious that it's not going to be about we need a woman in this role or we need a man in this role. And look, if I certainly think there's probably been times, not probably, I think there's been times in my career where people are like, oh, she got that job because we needed a woman in that job. I don't believe that to be true. I think at each opportunity I've had, I was qualified and ready and willing to take on the challenge. So that is part of it. Now, with that, I certainly think I have a responsibility to advocate, especially for leadership roles. We are predominantly women now. We're 54% women at Corgan, but we're still working toward that same parity once you get into our officer or leadership levels. And a big part of that, and something that I think it is a way to make sure you're championing women, is the maternity leave, paternity leave, and flexibility in return to work. And that's where I think a lot of companies get it wrong, that it's this is our policy. And if you don't like it, you can work here or not work here. And we have seen so much success with just having more flexibility in that return. If somebody's not ready at exactly that 3-month mark, let's talk about it. If they want to be part-time for a year, let's talk about it. What's your responsibility? What's your role? Does this impact what? It's not just an automatic yes or no either.
It's thoughtful.
I think we have done a good job of encouraging conversations around it, though, and letting those conversations be really welcomed. And I credit our HR team. So my role as president is mostly focused around brand and culture. So our incredible marketing leader reports to me, and an incredible HR leader reports to me, so that we're able to kind of have a leadership vision in crafting those areas of our.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I think one of the things I want to kind of go into here for a minute is so many of our listeners, they've got companies that may be grossing, 8-10 million to a couple $100 million. And your conversation, you mentioned it earlier, and I think you drive a lot of this at Corgan. If not, I think you're overseeing it, or you've been a champion. What are some pragmatic things that a CEO, business owner can do to be thinking about career path for their team members? Seems so easy to be said than done, but what are some hooks? What are some tools that owners could start to? Is it resources they need to pursue? Are there tools? Coach us up on, because I think so much of your all success is clearly talent development at Corgan.
Well, and I would say it's continuous improvement.
Okay.
And maybe that's where I would start. I think we see a lot of companies, and one thing I love about my job is that we get to go inside all these companies and working on their workspaces.
So fun. Yeah.
I mean, my master class has been the CEOs that I've gotten to sit in a room with while they talk about their vision for.
Absolutely. You see the inner workings of them all.
Yes. People like Gary Kelly explaining, why would you renovate the Southwest Airlines headquarters when they have one of the most enviable cultures in the world? It was, it's amazing. But I think setting up, what are your values? Everybody does that, right? And we're actually in the process of this right now. But what does that look like? So you hear people say, we champion training and development. How?
Yep.
Because all employees really are looking for is, how does that impact me? And we work really hard on our messaging of start with that and then finish with how it impacts the business. And we mess up all the time. When we announced we were an ESOP, which was 8 years ago, is now a very funny thing we were so excited. Bob Morris was our CEO at the time, and then in the leadership group, we were like, because before there were shareholders, but you had to be an officer, you had to be an architect because of the way our business was set up. Anyway, we were like, people are going to freak out. People are going to love this when we tell them every single person is going to be an owner. When I say it was and we have 400 people in the auditorium at El Centro when we're announcing this, golf clap at best.
And to quote Scott Wood, you get some wah wah. It sounds like
wah wah.
And I mean, Bob's up at the podium.
Wow.
And those of us that are sitting behind him are like,
what just happened?
I don't think anybody we should have just said free money, but then it's free money that you can have in 30 years.
Yeah.
And it was funny how wrong we had it. And it literally took, I would say, 5 or 6 years until people's statements started to have meaningful dollar amounts on it. Then it was wait a minute.
Yeah.
If I keep working here, this could be impactful to my retirement at the end. But I mean, that day it was
what did y'all miss?
We missed how, that was my point. Thank you.
No, you were on it.
We missed what it meant to a 25-year-old employee sitting in the audience. It meant free money in 35 years, which meant nothing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was, we talk about it often when we're working on messaging or working on a firm initiative. It's this can't be like the ESOP. Wait, what does this mean to them?
The ESOP became that thing you don't want to do.
Yeah, because we're making big investments in opening new locations, in considering acquisitions, and that obviously takes capital that we need to yes, we're reporting to you all that we're doing well. And that's something Jack Corgan started. We report our performance every year no monkeying with the numbers, straight up to the
Transparency.
entire firm.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Scott and
then
Mark
you
have
have to
done that here, and
message-
it's correct.
If you're showing profitability, you then have to message, okay, here's what we're doing.
Yep.
And we don't break it down to we're doing this with this and this, but here's how we're reinvesting and here's why, to create opportunity. So career path was your question. I think a lot of companies mess up in talking about growth, just that growth is good. But to the individual employee, growth is good. Why? And for us, a lot of that growth is good is because of the career trajectory. Because it's really hard to say, hey, you want to be on this leadership trajectory, but we're not going to get bigger. So unless somebody gets out of your way, I don't really know where you're going to go. If you're growing, and we're starting to talk about career mobility as we're spreading out to more offices, it's not something we've been good at. There are a lot of firms that are very good about incentivizing people to move to another place, to establish a practice. That has not been something we've been strong at. And so that's something we're going to work on. How do we incentivize people for their career trajectory, for a path to go and help us establish somewhere else?
You've been in so many different office places, so many CEOs. You've got 100. It's an exercise we love to do here, Lindsay, at Decision Points. You got 100 entrepreneurs, business owners in the audience. You got 1, 2, 3 minutes. What do you want to challenge them, inspire them? It is so interesting. You've been literally in the kitchen of so many successful companies, and maybe some that not been so successful. How would you coach up leaders based on all of this experience that you've gained?
Being present and engaged is something that has always stood out to me in certain leaders. Jim Lentz was the CEO of Toyota when they moved here. He did not even bring a phone or a computer into a meeting. If he was in that meeting, he was in that meeting. It might be for 15 minutes, and we would have been told that ahead of time. Like, Jim's here for 15 minutes. We need to make sure we cover these things with this. But when he was there, he was there. And that is something I always find fascinating when a leader comes in with 2 phones and a laptop and leaves the room 3 times during the presentation. And I have learned from that. It's like, if you can't be in the meeting, don't be in the meeting.
Yeah.
Because you're the one everybody is waiting to hear from. A lot of our upfront work with our clients is visioning or discovery process. We will really talk to the CEO and say, hey, we can do a one-on-one meeting with you if that works best. We'd love to have you in the session, but only if you can be in the session in a way that still makes it productive. Is the culture here that everybody's just going to be waiting for you to speak, Scott, and then they will just say, yeah, whatever Scott said, that's what we want. And, great CEOs are like, I don't want to be there. You're right. Have that meeting, give everybody an opportunity to have their voice. So I think that you hear people talk about it and be aware of the shadow you cast or the waves you put in the water. I think that's, I've learned from watching, which has been a gift. So I certainly try not to do it. And then when it does happen, we recently made a hire that wasn't a good fit. And one of the hardest things for me, and this is very recent, some people knew we were making a bad hire and people didn't feel comfortable telling me. And that's something I have to fix now, because all of a sudden now my shadow has become too long.
Thank you for the courage to say that at the very, very end. Lindsay, we started this conversation, I think, before we started rolling about that vulnerability, and people learn present and engaged. And what I pick up there, Lindsay, and then Scott, if you have any final words, be willing to learn at all stages in life. And that's what you just said right there, that Lindsay's going to learn some things here.
Yeah, that's the best part.
100% it is, but it's not always perceived that way. Sometimes learning, it feels pain at first, but we know it produces great results. You got anything else?
Lindsay, thank you so much. This was great.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Lindsay, thank you very much. Thank you for spending time with Decision Points. Have a great day.